Second meeting of Owen Sound City Council. It's great to see so many people here live and in person this evening. We have a reasonably light agenda tonight, and we have some great deputations that are going to come forward and bring us some good news too, so looking forward to this. We have completed the in-camera portion of our minutes, and we now have a guest from the Crossroads Victory Church, Pastor Brian Drysdale, and I'll welcome you this evening.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good to have you here, and you're bringing us our faith blessing for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Can we just bow for a word of prayer? Father, we thank you for this city. We thank you for what you're doing in this city. We thank you, God, for this council, for our mayor. We just pray a blessing over them all, and we just ask for your wisdom and your guidance tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor Drysdale, for coming, and it's good to meet you. Are there any additional items from any members of council? Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have three. The first two are congratulations to two organizations, the Climate Change March, Sweetwater, and the third is about the buses, because it's been about a month since we talked about them.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I have two congratulatory things and an upcoming event I want to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Purdon.
Also, in the spirit of announcements, a short announcement of an upcoming event.
Councillor Wright.
Just a short, very short explanation about the art gallery.
Okay. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question for the clerk about the city's election sign bylaw.
Okay. Councillor Lemon.
Yes, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions about the Black Clawson Kennedy site and some problems there.
Any members of staff? Are you sure? Ms. Corsi.
I believe you'll note that there is a bylaw on for the airport lease. Thank you. And minutes.
Thank
you
you.
for bailing me out on
That's
that.
part of the Operations Advisory Committee? Okay. That should be on council's desk. Okay, thank you. And I will ask Mr. Becking for just a brief overview of weekend events as a result of the incredible rainstorm that we endured yet again. So we'll go to that at other business. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one other brief item. I wonder if we could get an update from staff on the Building Canada Fund and that application.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest, please? Councillor Body.
Thank you, Your Worship. I declared a pecuniary interest with a matter 6A in the in-camera report and the related 12B7 in the regular agenda. I have a involves an application that involves a client of mine.
That has been noted. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes, please, from September the 8th and 9th.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Body, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on September 8th and 9th, 2014, as printed, be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Resolution moving council and committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Body, that City Council now move into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We're now in committee of the whole. We do not have any public meetings today, but we do have a couple of deputations, and I'll invite Yvonne Corrence, the chair of the Western Ontario Drama League Festival. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Haswell, and good evening, members of council. As Her Worship just said, my name is Yvonne Corrence. I'm a long-standing member of Owen Sound Little Theatre, but tonight I'm wearing the hat of the chairperson of the Western Ontario Drama League Festival. This will be held on March the 16th to the 21st in 2015. And along with some of my fellow members of the Owen Sound Little Theatre, I hope to inform you about this wonderful upcoming event, and that will both benefit the city of Owen Sound artistically and financially. As I hope you have in your packages tonight, your information packages, you might have gotten some promotional materials that are already well underway that gives you a little bit of background information. As you can see, that's on that information that once again we'll host this festival. This week includes performances at the Roxy of top 5 plays of the 2014 and 15 season from across southwestern Ontario, plus an opening night VIP reception, workshops, and public adjudications which will be held at our host hotel the Days Inn. This week is topped off with an awards gala where the professional adjudicator John P. Kelly will announce his choices for a list of best of awards. It's like a mini Tony Awards right here in Owen Sound. This festival is supported by a huge volunteer effort by the members of Owen Sound Little Theatre and sponsorships from local businesses and direction from the Western Ontario Drama League Board of Directors. Our audiences will include supporters of 5 visiting theatre companies, members of the Western Ontario Drama League and Theatre Ontario organizations, as well as a large number of local patrons who frequent the Roxy throughout the year. In total, we expect to welcome over 1,500 patrons during this week, many of whom will be here for the entire week and all of whom will support local restaurants and other service and retail businesses during their stay. Tonight, I'm here to request City Council's support for the festival in 2 ways. First, we're asking that Council help to offset our operating costs with a very small contribution of $350. Yes, we know budgets are tight, yours and ours. But we've looked at our overall expense list and tried to break things down into smaller components to reach out to more people for their assistance. This, we are responsible for, this $350 will go to help towards the hospitality for which we're responsible from morning to midnight, Monday to Friday for all the cast and crew. This could be anywhere from 30 to 60 people or more for each of these 5 days. Secondly, since the recent renovation of the Roxy facade, we are now able to project images on the exterior walls. We've tested this, it works. This opportunity helps us to feature our event, the Festival 2015, as well as our festival sponsor, from dusk to dawn during the week. But in order to make that happen, we need approval from Council to access the light standard, which is located directly across the street from the Roxy, and have use of the electricity provided by that light standard to plug in an LCD projector. We hope that you will consider supporting this event and our cultural arts community by allocating the $350 operational fund support and approving the use of the light standard as requested tonight. Your commitment will help to ensure a financial success, in addition to what we are confident will be an artistic success and a valuable economic booster for Owen Sound. So on behalf of Owen Sound Little Theatre, I thank you for your time and consideration for your requests, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much for this presentation, and this is just another great example of what's happening at the Roxy and how economic development is partly the Roxy as well.
Absolutely,
so we're all
absolutely.
in it, so I thank you for that. Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, considering the investment in the community that's going to come in with the WODL, having been in a few WODLs a few years ago, there were a lot of people involved, and I would move that we request Council to make the $350 grant to the WODL or Owen Sound Little Theatre. I'm not sure which it should go to, but
It goes directly to Owen Sound. We're Owen Sound Little Theatre, sorry, through your worship to Councillor Lemon. Owen Sound Little Theatre is the host, so it would be going to Owen Sound Little Theatre.
And the second part, I think putting a picture on the building is just fascinating, and I will also move to support that as well. I think that will be an attraction in and of itself for people to come to Owen Sound to see this, and once you've done it once, that could be a really positive vehicle for the future. And I think that's really exciting. It's just that technology has gone so far ahead, it's phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the city manager, and then we have some more speakers from council.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wonder if the councillor would consider on the second item doing it in principle, so that we can just confirm that it would comply with the municipality's bylaws.
All right, it would be approved in principle, and we would move as quickly as possible to confirm that there's no issues that have to be resolved.
Councillor Chamberlain and Councillor McMahon.
Yes, I would just like to mention in Councillor Lemon's idea of the grant, could we change that word grant to, I was wondering about if the money could come through our promotions with our sponsorship through the economic development piece.
That's where the budget would come
That
out of
budget quite
that.
easily?
Yeah, because that's bringing tourism to Owen Sound,
Yeah.
and it's certainly the where it should come from. I wasn't being specific, I guess I should have been, but I assumed it would come out of economic development, because it's the same as putting an ad in the brochure. It's nothing different than that.
Okay, Councillor Purdon. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be right back.
So I'd like to speak in support of the motion, and I think this is a really excellent example of culture as culture as an economic driver for the city. Certainly the rock scene, we just had the Sweetwater Festival the past weekend, and many Riv Fest and Summer Folk, really important community initiatives, and I think the idea of supporting this as using these types of opportunities to promote the city is a really sound investment.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. It's when you wait till the end to speak, all your colleagues have already raised my points. To the first one about the sign on the wall, that sounds like a very interesting idea. I was just going to say, I think we need to make sure it meets. You said dusk till dawn. I'm not sure that is necessarily going to work with some of the residents that live down in that area, but we'll get a report back on that and see where we go. And as far as the grant, the advertising, you had mentioned for the 350. I'm assuming the city would be one of like an advertiser. You'd have our logo, our name somewhere in your programs, that type of an idea?
Yes, we would.
So I appreciate you coming forward early. Quite often we get people bringing things forward the week before or perhaps the month before. You've given lots of time we haven't set our budgets yet. Mr. Furness, through Economic Development, does have a budget for advertisements for city events. This certainly would appear to fit within that, and you've given lots of time for that discussion to happen. So I appreciate that, and I'll support it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, is Owen Sound Little Theatre, do we still put on the best Western Ontario Drama League's events? Because when I was involved, they were the best. All the other municipalities that put them on, they couldn't compare to the one that we did. Is that still the case?
Of course it is.
Of course it is, all right.
If I might add or respond to that, Your Worship.
Yes.
Councillor Adair, we've hosted the WODL festival in Owen Sound 11 times since 1971. We've had 3 times. This is our 3rd time now since 2006. We are the most northern placed, geographically most northern community theatre company within Western Ontario Drama League, and I've already been attending board of directors meeting. Everyone is very excited about coming to Owen Sound just because they know it's a great place to visit, and it's a great place to have fun and celebrate wonderful community theatre from across the southwestern part of our province. So
Absolutely.
Right.
Councillor Body.
Thank you, Your Worship. I assume Councillor Lemon's motion is asking for a report back. I'm just thinking if this is in principle and it doesn't work, then I think we should know why, if there's limits or.
That is my intent, that the in principle part is the light on the light standard against the building. And if there's any kind of issue, I'm sure, I would want a staff report as to why it can't be done, so we can find a way to make it happen. Exactly. Maybe there's something we have to do, and so be it.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. Siobhan, you know my feelings about the theatre, because I think we have the best theatre. We see just as good theatre up here as they do in Toronto.
thank you.
We do. And I have a question for you. I certainly support the Economic Development Committee putting this in their budget. I want to know if people who are season ticket holders get first chance at these entries.
Well, all of our local patrons, season ticket holders and everyone will have access to the tickets October the 1st, and that's before we release the ticket sales to the broader WODL community. So that's way in advance of the event, as you can imagine. So we're hoping that, and we'll be getting some information out. Our email, we have now an e-blast system coming out of the Roxy box office. Our season's ticket holders will be notified accordingly.
That's great.
Thank you.
Very much, and I hope one of our plays is in it.
Unfortunately, to add to that, we can't enter our own. It's against the guidelines. It pulls away from our volunteer base to make festival happen. Plus, it kind of exhausts our audience, which pretty well most folks will have seen it by that time. So we won't have as big a house for that event, and those are guidelines determined by the WODL. So, yeah, we are having one adjudicated out of festival, but it won't be entered for this competition.
Okay, well, I know we'll be successful.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Well, thank you very much. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Break a leg.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Cheers. Thanks. We'll now invite another community cultural partner up to the podium. This is Richard Thomas with an update from the Waterfront Heritage Center, or the Owen Sound Marine and Rail Museum.
How do we get the like that maybe?
Community
Start the slideshow. This is the strangest looking Mac I've ever seen. Pardon me. Your Worship, members of council, thanks for allowing me to come and speak to you here tonight. I just wanted to bring an update, pardon me, on what's been happening at the Community Waterfront Heritage Center, or the Marine and Rail Museum, this year. We started the summer season with a bang when we participated in Doors Open, Owen Sound, on May 31st and June 1st, and we had a total of 523 visitors through our doors over the course of the 2 days of Doors Open. At the start of the summer, we realized that it was going to be a little daunting for the volunteer board to try and keep the doors open for as many hours as we hoped to over the summer, so we did hire 2 staff members, a summer coordinator and an assistant, and I'm happy to report that the summer coordinator, Claire Murray Chow, who is here with us tonight, stand up, Claire, and give a wave. Claire has been hired as our permanent part-time manager, and I would invite each of you to drop by the museum and introduce yourselves to Claire and hear what she has to say about the things we have going on down there. Of course, opening day, we had Ted Tizard, a 103-year-old former railroad employee, cutting the ribbon, and he gave us an interesting talk about some of his memories involved. And of course, there was a huge outpouring of public support, media coverage, and support, of course, from council. A number of councillors were there, and David Adair in the background there, who was acting mayor that day, helped us cut the ribbon. We've had lots of visitors this year. From the opening day to this afternoon, we've had more than 4,000 people through the museum in under 3 months. Rather than reducing our hours as we had planned on doing once the busy summer season was over, we decided to remain open, and in September so far we've had 675 of those visitors. So it was a good call to keep the museum open this month. Where are they coming from? Well, it's interesting. Of course, there are lots of Owen Sound residents coming into the museum. They're proud of their city, its heritage, and the museum, of course. Lots of Grey Bruce residents have been visiting, and everybody who comes through seems to bring a visitor or 2 along with them. We've had lots of people from across Ontario. The page from August 14th in our guest book shows the range from Niagara Falls, Caledon, St. Catharines, Mississauga, Grimsby, North Bay, St. Thomas, Newcastle, Barrie, London, and Kitchener. That's one day. So it's pretty good. We've had a lot of people through, and we've had people from all over Canada as well. Lots of world travelers this summer to the museum as well, and I found this the most interesting because I had no idea that people from as many countries as we have on the slide there are arriving at Owen Sound and looking for things to do. So it's really great for us, and I think to a person they are quite interested in the marine and rail heritage of this community. Lots of guest book comments. I'm not going to read them all out loud to you, though I could as a broadcaster. suffice it to say that people really, really are finding things, we've made a lot of changes in the museum, and they're finding it a pleasurable place to visit. In terms of our operations, we decided at the beginning to charge admission by donation rather than a set fee, and we've raised almost $3,000 this summer from admission donations, which I think is, none of us really knew what to expect, but I think that's pretty good compared to what it might have been. We did receive a grant from the Community Foundation, which is allowing us to replace the technology in the museum, a computer to have our collection on, laptops for designing advertisements and that sort of thing, and Facebook, all of that stuff that you need to do as an organization. As we move forward, I just wanted to fill you in on a few of the plans that we've got. In 2015, we'll be appearing at a number of local events. This picture is taken at the Grey Central Railway Club and Show and Meet at Participation Lodge this past weekend, where we were really well received with all the model railroad enthusiasts, and we'll continue to look around for opportunities to partner and to be involved in groups and organizations. Once we close the museum at the end of October, the board will begin in earnest its strategic planning. And we've always said right from the start that what we want to do is try to determine what the museum could be in the future. Because, we've known all along that the old model is not a sustainable model. And the cataloging of artifacts will continue over the winter as well.
I have to ask, is that where the retreat is? I'd be happy to join you.
Well, we have all this money that you folks gave us, and we got to spend it this year, otherwise, what'll happen? Well, there's always one slip up in every slideshow, right?
That was good.
Speaking of artifacts, we do have a couple of plans that I wanted to share with you tonight, things that we wanted to add to our collection. The first is a lifeboat from Chi Cheemaun. We've been offered the last lifeboat from Chi Cheemaun, and it'll be an outdoor exhibit. It's presently in storage, just waiting for us to figure out what the heck we're going to do with it. Because, of course, as you know, with anything publicly, there's always risks involved, and of course, what could we salvage from that? This is one that's up at the Little Schoolhouse Museum up in South Baymouth. They got one as well, and my understanding is that they've got a special cradle being built for it that will essentially put it up on its side so that it can't be gotten into, it won't fill with water, snow, or anything else, and is an excellent way to exhibit it. So that's something that we're hoping to do. The other big thing that has come up just recently that we're really hoping to proceed with is this. A 1954 CN dining car. One of our members happened to be visiting in another community not too far away, and we were led to believe that that community was ready to divest, if I can use that word here, divest of the CN car, and it's in pretty nice condition. The outside is certainly the worst. It needs a good paint job, but inside it's in really nice condition, all original. And of course, one of our goals and one of the suggestions that came from our community was that they wanted somehow food or something to be down there on the harbor. So, if you're going to do that, you've got to start out with some place. And it's my understanding, I didn't tour it, but I understand that the kitchen is intact and still in working condition as well. So we will be working with city staff. All this is very up in the air at this point. It's going to take a bit of fundraising to bring the car to Owen Sound, and then of course we'll have to take a look at the tracks and where we want to put it, and of course all that will be done with city staff. So we'll be starting that fundraiser at some point, and then once we've done that and it looks like things are going to happen, we'll be returning to council, of course, to ask for an amendment to our lease agreement to allow this wonderful artifact to be added to the museum. One last thing, gosh, I can't even remember what that is. Oh, yes. Without the support of the city, none of this would have happened. And I'm here tonight on behalf of our board to thank council for your support of our efforts over the past year and a half, and to hope that we can count on your continued support as time goes on. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this great presentation. It's very exciting. Councillor Lemon and then Councillor Adair.
Well, first of all, congratulations. When this all started, a year ago now, a little over a year ago, I don't think anybody ever imagined the fantastic success that would be obtained this quickly. And further to the rail car, which is, I think, a dream come true, because it will give, the greater the mass of displays you have outside, the more people you will attract to the museum. That's been demonstrated repeatedly. And I think a dining car would just be absolutely fantastic. And I realize there have to be, I can't imagine how much change there would have to be to the lease, because I think the tracks in front of the railway, the station sort of go with the station. I mean, we don't use them for anything else that I know of, or haven't. And so I want to congratulate you on that. And I think this is just fantastic, because I see an opportunity there to create a real destination on the west side of the harbor. And I think this is phenomenal, and I want to congratulate all those people who put in the hours and the intensive work. I mean, when we had that first meeting at the Legion, and we had over 400 people there, I knew there was a groundswell of support, but it's gone far beyond what we'd hoped for, at least what I'd expected in the first year. And I think our thanks to you and to all the members of the board. And I enjoyed my association with this, and I think it's fantastic what you've done and where you're going, and Godspeed, continue.
Thank you.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. I'm very excited about the dining car, and glad that even though 15 years ago when I was on council as a new person saying, you know, we've got to keep those tracks in front of that museum, I was told that that was the stupidest thing people had ever heard. Obviously, it, 15 years later, it now has a use. I know the caboose is there, but the dining car, some of the best meals I've ever had has been on a dining car in a train. Of course, some of the worst meals I've ever had have also been on a dining car in a train. Are you going to have to purchase it, or is it one of those come and get it, but you have to
it's
move
free.
it? Well,
free.
sometimes people want to get rid of. Sometimes people want to get rid of things as long as you come and take it away. Or
Well, at this point, it's early to really state specifically.
What the-
It
okay, I
was
understand.
put forward to us that it was free as long as we moved it. And I can tell you that the moving costs will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000. So there will be a fundraiser associated with bringing this car. But given the support we've enjoyed in this community for other initiatives, I think that we'll find fairly quickly that Owen Sound will rise to the occasion.
it's sometimes easier to raise money when you have something very specific, like bring the car here. It's sort of
Exactly.
a campaign. Just curious about the rescue boats off the Chi Cheemaun. Are they not going to have those on the Chi Cheemaun anymore? Like, what are they? Why are you getting one?
Several years ago, they replaced all of their emergency evacuation equipment, the marine disaster equipment on Chi Cheemaun. And there's an excellent video available if you'd like to see it that details the whole thing.
Thanks very much. This is a great project. I hope the dining car comes through.
So do I. Thanks.
A few more questions. Councillor Chamberlain.
Actually, I don't have a question either. I just want to thank you about the way the volunteers are handled at the museum. I did sign up. It took them a long time to need me because there weren't very many spaces. But I can tell you that I got communication on what to expect when I arrived at the museum. I was welcomed and given all the orientation. And then I was visited again while I was there on my first occasion to volunteer. And I just think that the volunteers have come through and they need to be complimented. I know you introduced your staff, but the volunteers are pretty important down there too, and I thank them.
The volunteers are everything down there.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other members of council? Councillor Body.
How many volunteers do you have, do you know? Oh, obviously you know.
Well, they'd be in the hundreds.
Yeah, cool.
Do we have a direct figure? 60 active.
Cool.
And they're filling all the hours. I don't think we maybe have had one shift all summer where the emergency email went out saying, we need someone. So it's been very good.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other members of council? Seeing none, again, thank you so much, and congratulations to you and the board of directors and all the volunteers. It's really a bit of a story of like a phoenix, and I have to say, well done. Look forward to having a coffee on the dining car.
Okay, thank you.
And I love this picture. It's a beautiful shot.
It's a beautiful building.
It is. It is so. Thank you. Is there any member of the public here this evening that would like to ask a question of his counsel? And for members, please step forward and give us your name and address just for the clerk, please.
Good evening, my name is Bernice Ackerman, and I live at 801 3rd Avenue West, is that one?
There
we
go.
are, sorry. I live at 801 3rd Avenue West. My question is regarding the all candidates meeting that's coming up on October the 8th. I think this year, considering the number of new candidates that are running, it's important for all of us who will be voting that we get to meet the candidates and their platform and really get to understand and make a good choice on voting day. I'm wondering if City Council would agree to extend the bus service that evening. I know you're going to do it on voting day, which is very much appreciated, and I think for the all candidates meeting, which is going to be at the Bay Shore, it would be very helpful if there was access to buses that evening, as well as the accessibility vehicle. So as many people as possible could come, and I just wanted you to consider that on behalf of the public.
That's a great question and a great idea. Thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Well, I think that's an absolutely brilliant idea, because particularly when it's at the Bay Shore, it's for people who live on the west side at the north end, for instance, the taxi cost from there to the Bay Shore, I don't even want to guess what it would be.
Around $15.
Well, that,
One way.
one way, so that's $30 return. I would make a motion that the staff look at the extension of bus service to the Bay Shore for the all candidates meeting on the
8th of October.
8th of October, as being in the community interest and a good way of promoting the transit service as well, because you may get some people on who've never been on it before, and they may discover that you can avoid the fuss, take the bus.
There are other all candidates meetings too,
Yes.
and there could be requests for the same service for those other meetings as well. But Ms. Corsi.
Of course, you can anticipate my question. What budget would you like that taken out of?
The advertising and promotion budget for the transit, because we haven't, for instance, we are only now printing brochures of the schedules and routes. We didn't print them for the first 6-7 months of the year, so, I mean, there should have been some money saved there.
And are we to do this for any and all candidates meetings?
My intent at this point is just to move for the Chamber of Commerce All Candidates meeting. Like, I know there is a DIA meeting, but nothing has come forward from the DIA so requesting, and they could certainly bring it forward.
Do it.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You
Thank
don't
you,
have to
Mayor
stand there any
Council.
longer. We appreciate your idea and your question. Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The Chamber of Commerce is putting that on, I believe. Should we not, I know Bernice has left but shouldn't the Chamber be responsible to get the people there? I mean, I think it's vitally important that we do get the people there, but the Chamber is the host, and I suspect that we should be asking the Chamber to get the buses there, if that's the case. I'm certainly not opposed to getting the buses out and getting them there, but then it is a Chamber meeting, and should we interfere with the Chamber meeting? I guess that's my question. It's a Chamber.
I think
right.
I think for the amount, just 1 second, I think
Sorry.
that for the amount of money it is going to cost for the extra 3 or 4 hours of service, I'm sure that we can allocate that from somewhere, just to allow more people to take this in. I think you know, it is a big slate, it is an important election, and I think it's so important that everybody have access to it. So if the chamber would like to partner, that's terrific, but in the short term, I think the motion on the floor is to make it happen and use city resources to do that. My understanding for an extension of this sort, we may be looking at $600 or $700. That's
Well,
usually what it is.
Yeah, the
for
other
a couple of
problem with
hours.
getting the chamber involved at this point is this is the last council meeting before that all candidates meeting. So if the chamber says no, then we're
Well,
stuck
then
with
we
no.
have to do it.
Yeah, but I think we should invite the chamber to make a contribution, but I think we should guarantee that
Is-
it's going to happen.
Okay, just if you could word your motion for us, Councillor Lemon, and then we can have a discussion and vote.
I would move that the City of Owen Sound provide bus service with its existing fleet, including the accessible transit bus, and that the partners be sought in the cost of this. But we go ahead with it irregardless. In other words, if the chamber wants to kick some money in, great. If they don't, we're still going to do it.
Right.
Don't hold a cannon to their...
May I ask a question,
Please,
Mayor and
go
Council?
ahead, yes.
I did ask the Chamber of Commerce if they would work with you on this, this item as a suggestion to them, and I was told by the manager, Mr. Boonstra, that no, that he felt that should come as a private citizen to council. So I did make that suggestion to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we do
Well,
have a
that
motion on the
answers that
floor,
question.
and the city manager,
Just for
please.
your information, it is about $350 an hour. And I
Okay.
guess part of my question is, given the nature of the meeting, it wouldn't necessarily be a standard conclusion time.
Mhm.
So do we just leave the buses on call
It,
till the end of the meeting?
through, it is, actually, it does end at 9. There is no run-on. It's from 7 till 9. It's over.
So we're okay with
I believe every
saying
candidate will have
9
20
o'clock.
seconds to speak. So use your words carefully. Okay, thank you for that. And generally speaking, in other places, in other worlds, all candidates' meetings can go on for hours and hours on end. Because this is televised, Rogers has a very prescribed 7 to 9, and the chamber has supported that over the years. I recall an election where there were, interestingly enough, 27 candidates, and I think we each had 60 seconds. I think the mayoral candidates got 2 minutes, so it was quite pointed.
think they should. I think they should be the same equity.
So needless to say, let's stop that conversation right now as we are in council, and we'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is carried. Thank you, and thank you to Mrs. Ackerman for bringing that idea forward. We have a large group of students here from Georgian College tonight, and I'd like to welcome the Police Foundations class of Georgian College campus Owen Sound. Welcome, and it's good to see you be involved in municipal governance, and I believe I'm coming to speak to you very soon in your class, so look forward to that. You may get some questions out of this that you can ask me more candidly in the classroom, so thank you. We have a consent agenda item, 4 items. What's council's direction on this? Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. On item 12A2, this has been on the agenda for a couple of meetings now. Hopefully we can get to it. The correspondence from the Director of Financial Services to the Ontario government about our funding or lack thereof through the Municipal Partnership Fund. Just wondering if the Director could give us an overview of his letter and the challenges we're facing.
Please do.
Thank you. Through your worship, this was a letter I sent to Mr. Duhaney, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Finance, in regards to our Ontario Municipal Partnership funding that has been reduced since 2009 by the tune of nearly $1.1 million. Recent announcements lead us to believe that this will continue and in fact maybe increase the percentage of reductions. My letter was making him aware of how difficult this would be for the city. Over the years, certainly through, I know a number of councillors have met with us, with actually the ministers of finance on several occasions, as well as his staff, offering our suggestions of how we see this particular fund could be remedied, you might say. But suffice to say, they have continued on. Now we are taking the tack asking them to at least continue to reduce it gradually, as opposed to all at once. And my letter is asking Mr. Dehaney to do that, as well as giving us an early announcement of what the reductions may be this year, so that heading into budget, council can proactively absorb those losses. They've averaged the tune of $200,000 a year for the last 5 years. That is punishing on the city. I have a response from Mr. Dehaney that leads me to believe that we can expect an announcement shortly.
Thank you for this, and thank you for keeping this in front of council. Any further question, Councillor McMahon? Okay, Councillor Lemon.
Do we have any indication that they're maybe having mercy on us?
I have just spoken to the city manager, and I would say we're not getting that indication.
I was hoping. It would be a nice Christmas present.
Through your worship, I certainly hope we hear before Christmas, even the bad news.
Councillor Purdon.
This isn't in regards to that item. It's about, oh dear, the number, item 12A3, which we didn't deal with at our last council meeting because the council meeting was just so long, we just left it and it's come again. And we received copies of 2 resolutions, one from the municipality of West Grey and one from Meaford, to the Honourable Stephen Harper about their concerns about the deep geological repository plans and their concerns about that, and a resolution asking them to consider the impact that this deep geological repository potentially could have on water, drinking water, and in the area if it's located in some of the sites that are close by. There's several sites in Bruce County that are being considered. And I would like to ask our council send a similar resolution on behalf of our citizens. There has been extensive discussion on this. There is no consensus in the science that burying nuclear waste a kilometer from Lake Huron is a safe thing to do. And I think we should be, on behalf of our citizens, using the precautionary principle with this matter, and particularly since the science is incomplete, and that's very clear. That's been very clearly stated. There's many, many unanswered questions, and I think being cautionary is an important principle for a project like this that envisions burying these wastes deep in the limestone and then just leaving it there and sealing it up. These wastes will remain radioactive for up to 100,000 years. So that would be my motion, that we send a resolution similar to the one that was sent from the municipality of West Grey and Meaford.
Thank you. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question of clarification, and I'm not even, I just caught it. The 2 resolutions are not exactly the same. And I'm not sure if that's intentional or not intentional. Meaford's resolution says they do not support it, an underground DGR, and that they ask the government to seek alternatives, not near the Great Lakes Basin. West Grey's just says they ask the government to seek alternatives. They don't mention that they're in favor or opposed. They're just saying perhaps, and I have no idea, but I'm wondering if that was their way of saying a precautionary principle. So my question of clarification is what's your motion on those 2 points?
Councillor Purdon.
I would like a resolution that says they seek another site and not near the Great Lakes. That's my main concern, is that it was never envisioned as a potential site, the Great Lakes, for a repository of this nature. The bigger discussion about whether we should be burying nuclear waste at all, I think also requires study, but at the moment, I think for me personally and many citizens in our community, the concern is a project that would bury nuclear waste in our area. I don't think it's just being NIMBY either, because that's where the science is pretty clear that there's problems with that rock formation as well. So that would be the motion.
Councillor McMenamin?
So that would be what's on the screen right now, the West Gray one? And I'm sorry to be, but the Meaford one says they do not support it. West Gray's does not say that. So I just want to be...
I would rather have the Meaford resolution. I think it's the clearest of the two.
Okay. Further discussion to the motion? Councillor, no? All those in favor? In favor, opposed? That motion is defeated. Thank you. We have, yes, Councillor.
Sorry, subsequent motion, I would move the West Gray motion. I believe when this item was first raised, the discussion around this table was that we did not have the expertise to say if it was good or bad. Personal opinions aside, we did not have the scientific expertise. In my mind, the West Gray one talks about the precautionary principle that Councillor Purdon, which I tend to agree with. If there are alternatives, I think alternatives not in the Great Lakes would be, in my opinion, the best alternative. That's not to say no to the one they're considering, but it raises our concern, I guess.
Sure.
So anyway, that's my rationale, and I'll move the West Gray motion.
Okay. Discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. The other items remaining, 12.1, A1, 2, and 4. Motion to receive? Councillor Wright, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We now have a verbal report from the city manager with regards to the Black Clawson Kennedy property.
Your worship, members of council, if any of you have had the opportunity to drive by the site, I'm sure you've seen a significant improvement. The weeds have now all been cut and removed, and we essentially have only the trees and grass on the site at this point. Local contractor has been on site all of last week. The bylaw enforcement staff are working with the owner to get the low-lying area filled in so that we don't have issues next spring. Some repairs have been done to a section of the fence, and they do have regular inspections scheduled for every 2 weeks, but they're on site more often right now just to get the site to determine that the site's back in compliance.
Thank you very much for that overview. Of course, we all agree that the best thing that can possibly happen on that particular property is a development, and we'll all be supportive of seeing that move forward. Councillor McManaman and Councillor Lemon.
Thank you, Worship. I would agree with those comments you made. To the city manager, 2 questions. You said so bylaw staff are inspecting it every 2 weeks?
That's correct.
Okay. And the second question, obviously, this is going to be the low-lying areas that allowed those weeds to grow up in the first place and appears to not be in compliance with the bylaw. And I understand the chief saying we need to work to gain compliance as opposed to charging. Any indication on when that would take place?
I don't think they have determined the exact solution yet, so until that happens, I don't have a timeline for you.
Could I ask then, or could we ask, until that question's answered, this issue doesn't oh, maybe it doesn't go away at all, but that part certainly doesn't go away. So could we have an update at the next meeting, if you could request from the police chief on that particular matter? What exactly is the plan? I just, none of us want to be sitting here in next spring talking about the exact same thing. Or, okay, maybe we want to be sitting here, but we don't want to be discussing BCK. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Body.
Maybe you don't.
That wouldn't be a very good, anyway, no, I better not say that.
I really don't think that would.
Anyway, if you could, at the next meeting, if you could get further update from the chief on that particular point. What is the plan for those low-lying areas?
I can do that, Council.
Thank you.
Councillor Lemon.
Well, I have a fairly major concern about the fencing. We have a bylaw which requires that for fencing materials and decks, you're required to use treated lumber or you paint it. Now, the wood I looked at looked like your normal stud 2x4s that are used in inside construction. They did not appear to be pressure treated. Now, I may be wrong on that. I'm not a woody or wood expert. But if they are not treated, pressure treated, then the fence repairs are not in compliance with our standards, which require quite clearly either pressure treated or treated lumber or lumber that is going to be painted, so you can still do your white picket fence if you want. That would be a big white picket fence around that site. But the 2x4s that I saw put in place, and there's a couple of 2x6s as well, all appeared to be standard grade spruce. And can you investigate that, please, and bring back a report? Because if that is the case, that wood will rot. And some of the nails that were used were not galvanized to the best of my ability to see, and they will rust out. That's the reality. That's why when you build a deck, you use galvanized nails and you use weather-resistant materials. And the same with fences, because it is in our bylaw.
That has been noted, and with discussions between city manager and chief of police and bylaw staff, I'm sure a verbal report will come back in 2 weeks' time. We do have to keep in mind that we do have properties all across the city that we want to treat equally and fairly, and I think that if it's pressure-treated wood, it's pressure-treated wood. If that's the bylaw, and that's how it'll be enforced. So I think we need to keep in mind that it's an equal playing field for all.
Oh, I certainly agree with you, Your Worship, but I have not seen any fencing put up by anybody else that doesn't use pressure-treated wood because they know it'll rot out in a couple of years.
Good-o. Thank you for that update, and we have a report from the Manager of Economic Development and Tourism. This is with regards to declaring some industrial lands surplus. It's Council's direction on this. I may just bring this to your attention that the staff report is specific to 2 parcels of land. Probably the easiest description would be the corner of 16th Street. No, I'm going to ask for staff to go over this, actually. I'm reading this. Could I have a brief run-through on this, City Manager, please?
Well, thank you. As you know, our Economic Development Officer is down in Toronto promoting the city.
Yes.
So I'll do my best.
Yes.
Both of these parcels are in the industrial park, and if you turn to the last page of the report, you can see them identified, the ones that are being declared
Thank you.
surplus.
There we go.
This is more of a housekeeping matter. We've noted that we never actually declared the entire industrial park as surplus lands to the needs of the city. Clearly, the intent all along has been to sell these lands and to get industrial users on them, so I would consider this very much just a housekeeping matter, just to dot the i's and cross the t's.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adair.
More than happy to move the recommendation. That's what I kind of thought. It was odd that we would declare land we're trying to sell surplus so we can sell it, but obviously there's a reason for that, so let's do that.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We now have a report from the city clerk, and this is with regards to restrictive covenant. Again, a bit of a housekeeping item on 1104 7th Street East. Is Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. If it's nothing I like more than housekeeping, so I will move this as well.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have site plan approval from the Manager of Planning and Heritage with regards to Georgian Bay Fire and Safety and an expansion. Thank you, Councillor Burden.
Yes, I'd be happy to move the recommendation for the site plan approval with conditions that are outlined in the report.
Good to see local businesses growing. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I have staff introduce this report? Because I
Please.
think it is a good news story and we need to highlight it.
Thank you. Councillor, Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Your Worship. Georgian Bay Fire and Safety has made an application for site plan approval. The approval is for a 3,574 square foot addition to their existing building in the industrial park. Certainly this is in keeping with your strategic plan initiative to retain and grow existing businesses. The site is within the employment designation of our official plan, and the proposal conforms to the official plan policies. The site is zoned M2 or heavy industrial, and the proposed warehouse and office use is permitted within that zone, and the site meets the site and building regulations. The plan has been presented to our Accessibility Advisory Committee, and with the inclusion of the 2 barrier-free parking spaces at the front, the committee is recommending approval. So as Councillor Purdon has noted, the recommendation is to approve the site plan subject to the conditions that are there for you this evening. To expedite the process, you'll see that we have the bylaw with the site plan agreement on Council's agenda as well this evening.
Thank you very much for the overview. Councillor McManaman, any further questions?
No, I would just highlight this company has 6 different sites across southern Ontario and chose Owen Sound for this expansion. So I think it's good news for the company and for the McKays and for this city.
Absolutely. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have a report. Sorry, I've lost my spot here. 12B5. We have a report from the Manager of Planning and Heritage with regards to the removal of the 1-foot reserves on the Northridge property. Councillor Purdon?
I'd move the recommendation as well. My understanding is to remove the 1-foot reserve with Northridge, and that the developer would pay all of the legal costs.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Boddy?
Is this the RCA property, or I'm not sure? I had trouble figuring out where it was.
Through you, Your Worship, it is a property located with some frontage on 9th Avenue East. So it's in that area, north, I would say, of 23rd Street.
It's just at the bottom of page 1 of the report.
Sorry, between 22nd and 8th Avenue A. So it's slightly west of 9th, north of 22nd.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the purchasing agent with regards to county tender supply and delivery of various fuel products. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. I'm certainly want to move this motion, and it's just great that we're working together with the county. That's our objective, and we're doing it, and it's good so that the county can purchase in bulk, and it saves us money. So I'm happy to move the motion.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from our purchasing agent with regards to a potential lease agreement and a lease opportunity at the former Canadian Pacific train station. Another good news story, which we can't say a lot about, other than it's a good news story. What's council's direction on this? Councillor Purdon.
Always happy to make a motion for a good news story. So the recommendation is to consider the staff report on the leasing of the former Canadian Pacific train station, and that staff will begin the negotiations towards a letter of intent. And during that period, there will be no further negotiations with other parties. And perhaps staff could say a bit more if they'd like to about this development. Or you can tell staff.
Well, we can tell them together and we can ask them together. Director of Community Services, could you give just a brief overview of the background and the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Worship. The city acquired the CP train station, which is the train station located on the east side of the harbor, in 2010. And at that time, there was an Ontario Heritage easement placed on the property. The city's vision was to find an active or a purposeful use for the site, and we issued an RFP for that in 2010 and modified that RFP. At the end of August, there were 2 proposals that the city received, and in accordance with the provisions of the RFP, those were evaluated by staff. An in-camera report identifies for you the preferred lessee, and as the councillor has identified, the recommendation would be for you to enter into negotiations with the preferred lessee toward a letter of intent as well as a lease. It is noted that the lease is in excess of 21 years or potentially could be, so we suggest that we initiate the process to declare the land surplus for the purpose of negotiating a lease. So the city would not be selling these lands, but leasing them over a long-term period.
Thank you. We do have a motion on the floor. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a series of boards and committees for approval: accessibility and economic development and recreation and parks. Council's direction on these 4 items. Councillor Wright.
I just have a question in the Accessibility Committee minutes. There's a request that a letter be sent to the police talking about the crossings, pedestrian crossings. Has that been done? Has that been sent to the board?
Upon approval of council, we have that letter for the
Oh,
signature
okay.
of the chair.
Okay, so
Yes.
that will go. Okay, so that's the one. And then in the other set of minutes, economic development, there just needs to be a change in one of the motions. We just call the mayor rather than the major. So that, then we won't have to salute her when we come in. Other than that, those are the only 2 things. If I would, I'd move the motion, amended motion. Motion's as amended.
Okay, thank
Minutes
you.
as amended.
Thank you. Councillor Purdon.
I just wanted to comment on some of the content of the minutes from these committees. I sit on both the Cultural Advisory Committee and Economic Development, and just so that the public knows about really great salmon tour that's going on. I think everybody knows about that, but it bears repeating, and that's a terrific event that's running all through from now until October, up till Thanksgiving. Tourism talked about the use of social media and in the economic development report, and I just couldn't get over the fact that when I came on council, we weren't even talking about social media, and we were having these big discussions about Facebook and how you could use Facebook, and that it's been so incredibly successful, social media for the city, and such wide-ranging uses of it. So I just thought that'd be important to mention.
Thank you. Any discussion on Councillor Body?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to highlight a couple of other things that Councillor Purdon didn't in economic development. We had the meeting out at our airport, and some will remember the discussion around the election 4 years ago of whether the airport should be kept or not. Now that it's being managed by people that have airplanes out there and have put together a corporation to manage it, 2011, there were 2,884 takeoffs and landings. 2013, 2 years later, it had jumped to 6,800, which is a huge increase with the right people running it and the right gas price, I guess, partly. Double hangar has recently been installed. Management is looking to build another one. There's currently 7 aircraft on the waiting list to find inside hangar storage. There's 17 hangars on site with 41 aircraft. There was another statistic in there that I was looking for. 75 commercial flights in July alone, which is pretty impressive. And so it really is an asset to our community. What they haven't recorded here is the number of orange helicopters that have landed, bringing people to and from the hospital, refueling, and taking back off to London, Toronto, various places. So that the airport is proved to be an asset, and it isn't, I don't know the exact amount, it isn't costing us that much money to keep it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lemon.
I'm trying to remember exactly, but I think there's been about a 40% decrease in cost to the city over the past 3 years from what it used to cost us to what it's costing us now. There's been a substantial
There
decrease.
has been a substantial decrease. I don't believe 40% would be accurate, but there has been a substantial decrease.
There's been a decrease. It's not
Yeah.
continuing to go up, it's going down.
That's right.
And we just recently approved some more hangars.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you approve a hangar, that means more fuel sales and helps balance things out. So the airport, which was an albatross around our neck at one point, is becoming more and more positive. And I think that, I hope this continues with the management team that's out there, because they know about airports. Quite frankly, I know you land planes and you take off, and that's the sum total of my knowledge, and you put fuel in them. That's the sum total of my knowledge. I've never flown a plane, and I've flown in them, but I wouldn't want to.
Really?
Yeah, I
Thank you.
would get a little nervous coming in for a landing that I was landing in the wrong spot.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. And thank you, Councillor Body, for pointing that out. It's something that we're all particularly proud of. Could we have a motion to receive, approve? That was Councillor Wright. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. In-camera meetings minutes for approval. 12D 1 and 2, motion to approve. Councillor Purdon.
To approve the in-camera minutes.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a notice of motion. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm bringing this forward. This is something that we do up at the county, and it works very well. And the reason I'm bringing it forward is because there are 8 councillors on council, and we have a number of committees that we have 3 councillors and sometimes 4 serving on these committees. Mostly it's 3, and I think that the workload should be shared. That all councillors should have an opportunity to take the chair and chair the meeting, and I think it would be wiser for all the councillors to have the opportunity to get more involved in the committee if they do so. I think it would prevent what has sometimes been called ownership of a committee when you're in the chair for a certain length of time, and that can pose a problem, because if there is a problem, it falls on the chair's head, and that isn't really fair when there's other councillors on the committee. Of course, the downside of this is there is an election for chair, and the whole committee can vote for the chairperson of their choice. but sometimes I find the committee I'm on, I seem to be in the chair all the time because nobody else wants to take it. And I think it's important that other people take the chair of these committees. So that's why I thought, well, it works well at the county that you can only have it for a certain period of time, and then others have an opportunity to do it, that maybe we should try it with the city and see if it would work with the city. So that's the reason that I'm putting it forward.
Okay. The motion's on the floor. To the motion, Councillor Lemon?
Speaking in strong support of this, I don't believe that people should be chair of a committee in perpetuity. In the same way we do have a grandfather clause that if you're on a committee for a certain length of time, you have to step down for a year. That was brought in because eventually the committee becomes not controlled so much as dominated perhaps sometimes by one or two people or one person. And I think this is a very good idea to rotate it. I think it's progressive legislation, and I will definitely support it. And once we've had this for a while, maybe we could consider there be a maximum number of years, consecutive years, which someone may serve on a city committee as a councillor. In other words, you have to rotate within the system as well. I think that's stage 2, but I think I applaud Councillor Wright for bringing this forward. I think it's a very progressive thing and definitely something we should support.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. A couple of questions. The first, I guess, would be well, maybe it's a question to the clerk, actually, to start. Are we not, I recall that we were discussing reviewing our procedural bylaw. Is that accurate?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, that would be something that would start early 2015.
With that in mind, and I also recall this to be the question of the city manager, there's to be a review of the committee structure in early in the new year.
That's correct. So the two will go somewhat hand in hand, but we are looking at a number of housekeeping matters. This could certainly be added to that for consideration at that time if that was council's wish to do a more comprehensive review of the entire bylaw.
It would seem to me that if we're going to be looking at one part of that, we should be looking at all of it, not just one thing in isolation. That would be my first comment, so I would support reviewing it as part of that entire process. That would be my first comment. My second one, to Councillor Wright, your comments, everyone should have the opportunity. Everyone does have the opportunity to serve as chair of committees. For those that don't know, the first meeting of a committee, there's 10 people on the committee, perhaps 12, something like that. There's an election. There's a nomination process for who would run for chair, who's going to run for vice chair. Those are voted on by the members of the committee. So I would suggest that every member of that committee does have an opportunity to serve as chair or vice chair, as the case may be. If someone's an existing chair for a long time and they don't want to be, they don't have to stand for election. So they can be nominated and turn down the nomination, which I've seen happen at different committees. So I suppose, so those are my comments on those 2 points that you've raised. I think it's a bigger discussion, and I do think it's a discussion that's better had while we're reviewing the entire process, not one-offing. Even to Councillor Lemon's comments about rotating off committees. Perhaps that's a valid discussion. I don't think we should one-off that discussion either. Again, everyone has an opportunity through our committee selection process to serve on every committee if they so choose. If that process isn't fair, then or needs to be tweaked, then we should be looking at that in the big picture. Not, don't support one-offing. So I don't support the motion, and I would move to table it for the discussion of when the procedural bylaw is being discussed.
Okay, we have a motion to table. Any comments to the appropriateness of tabling? Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. I have no problem tabling this to that discussion, but I'd like to know when is that going to take place? Because we have a new council coming on, and I would like to see this happen with the new council.
We did do a timetable that we presented at the last council meeting, and certainly we can ensure that this is moved up to the degree possible.
Right.
We run into the challenge, of course, of just whether we can do it in December or whether it might have to be January.
Okay, I have no problem with that. I'll support a tabling motion to that.
Okay, very good. To the appropriateness of tabling, Councillor Lemon?
Certainly.
Okay,
I do not believe it is appropriate to table as to, we could very well, in all likelihood, be lame duck in December. And I don't know whether we could make that kind of change depending on the outcome in October. I feel that I would like to see that start when the committees are appointed after, with the new council. And I think that that is the time to do it. I don't think delaying it will, in my mind, is inappropriate to that time, because we will be lame duck, and I'm not sure how much we can do.
thank you. We will be, there will be a new council as of December the 1st, and that would certainly be well within the purview of a new council to have that discussion.
And further, we do not know what's going to happen to the committee structure. The new council may decide that they don't like what is being proposed and may have their own mind. Personally, I would like to see some changes, but I don't think that at this point it would be appropriate to bring those forth.
Certainly, there's been much discussion on the tabling motion. Any further discussion to tabling? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. That will be part of the larger discussion around the procedural bylaw and updating our own procedural bylaw as well. We have a number of people that have items of other business. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. I'll start with my first item, which is always good to start with your first item. I don't know why I said that. Was the climate change march this Sunday. Several of us were at that. In fact, contrary to what one of the radio stations said, I think they said there were several dozen people. There were well over 100 people on the streets. There were 350.
Yes.
I can count people in a room. I can't count them in a long string, but I knew there were much more than a few dozen. I think for municipalities, what's happening with climate change and our infrastructure has been demonstrated quite clearly to us in the last 2 weeks, when we have experienced basically two 100-year storms in 2 weeks. Now, for those who don't know what a 100-year storm is, it's a storm so big you should only get one every 100 years. You're certainly not supposed to get 2 of them in the same month. It puts an incredible burden, this changing of climate, on our municipal infrastructure. Not just the sewer, but even the last winter that we had, where it started to snow and never stopped, and we couldn't keep up with the snow plowing. So it is a very important issue. It's something we're certainly impacted as a municipality, how we can do our part, but it really is up to the national governments to do something, and to hopefully, when they meet at the UN in the next week, actually set some concrete protocols, because we can't afford, our infrastructure can't take all of this change. Now on to something that was fun this weekend. Was the Sweetwater Music Festival was on all this weekend. I was able to take part on Saturday night. I just want to see the level of musicality, professionalism that they're able to bring in is stuff that you would see in New York. And it's absolutely incredible, and I want to just put out kudos to the Sweetwater organizers and their staff. It was world-class, and I know we say that a lot, but it truly was world-class entertainment that you would go to New York, to Carnegie Hall, to see the kind of stuff that they were bringing. My last item is about buses, and I'll bring it forward and see what council thinks, but there's been a lot of back and forth and talk about taking the buses out to the Galaxy Cinema. I have talked to several councillors in Georgian Bluffs, and I know some other councillors around this table have talked to councillors in Georgian Bluffs, and I've talked to other councillors here, and it seems Georgian Bluffs is of the opinion, well, if you'd like to take them out, ask us, and we seem to be of the opinion, well, if you'd like to take the buses, you've got to ask us. I think at some point, someone needs to blink and make some decision. We don't really know what the impact to the new routes that we're proposing would be to take the bus out to the Galaxy Plaza. What I would propose is that we ask the consultant who did all the work, while it's still fresh in their mind, to look at what taking the bus out there would look like. That report would come to the new council, and they could decide what they want to do with it. Maybe not within the time frame of December or January of next year, because they're going to be quite busy. And then decide that council whether they want to take the next step and make a proposal to the new council in Georgian Bluffs. I certainly believe there is a way for, if Georgian Bluffs is interested, to pay for this through them applying to the gas tax money. What that would mean for us is added revenue into our system. It wouldn't cost them anything because they're eligible, I believe, for some gas tax money. There'd also be the revenue stream of just having more riders. I guess what I'm saying, there's been a lot of talk about doing this, so why don't we do the research or ask for the research to be done by our consultant while it's fresh in their mind? The next council can decide what to do with that information. We don't know that it's feasible to take it out, but we don't know that it's not, and we won't know unless we ask. So my first motion, and I guess it'll be up to the next council to decide what to do with the information, is to ask our consultant to prepare, to determine what the impact of the new four-route system would be by adding the bus route out to the Galaxy Cinemas.
Okay, we have a motion and lots of people to speak to it. Councillor Boddy?
Thank you. Given that getting a report from a consultant is going to cost money, isn't this probably something that should be discussed in the 2015 budget deliberations by the next council? I don't know where the money would be coming now. That would be my only concern. Not that I'm opposed to it. I'm just trying to figure out how we fund it and if this is the appropriate moment or it would be more appropriate for the next council, whoever's here, to decide that.
Going to go to the city manager and then back to Councillor Adair.
Just further information for council in your deliberation on the proposal. We did specifically ask the consultant to look at the possibility of expansion in the future, so that he would consider in his routing that we might need that capacity in the longer term. So, I can certainly go back to him, and that might assist with Councillor Boddy's question and say, what would it cost to actually draw that up? And then bring that back for council's information.
Councillor Adair?
Just the issue of where would the money come from, it's my understanding, and I'm sure I'll be corrected momentarily, is that the money for the design of the routes did come from reserves. Is that so that it did not come out of the operating, it came out of reserves, because at the time council thought that it's a long-term investment in having the routes designed for us.
Councillor Lemon and then Councillor McManaman.
Well, 2 points. Number one, I believe there is something over $1 million sitting in the transit reserve at this point. And so there is funding there, so that's a no-brainer. But the other thing I would ask for a friendly amendment, Councillor Adair, if I may, that includes specialized transit as well, because under the ODA, if we service with regular buses, we are required to service with that. But I think it should be inclusive in the motion. because one of the requests has been from a number of people who use the accessible transit to be able to go out to Galaxy to go to the movie, because at this time in Owen Sound, there are no taxi cabs that are designed for wheelchairs. And then we would be able to let people who are physically challenged enjoy life. And I think that's desirable. So would you consider that a friendly amendment? Thank you.
It was
Okay.
implied.
Okay. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I agree with Councillor Body's point that we need to find out what that costs first. And as far as it being a no-brainer, that's city taxpayer money we're discussing. So, right, from city taxpayer money. So, but until we find out what the cost is, I suppose that point is moot. So that would be my first thing. The second thing, Councillor Dare, I'm not opposed to looking at it. It was very clear. We had a meeting with Georgian Bluffs on this very issue. Myself, Councillor Twaddle, the mayor was there. I'm not sure. This was probably 4 years ago. We presented them with what it would cost. Were you there, Councillor Wright? There, what it would cost for them to run to Sunset Strip, and it was very clearly left with them, and they didn't come back. So, but I have no problem if it means who goes first. If we want to send a letter requesting that they, I don't know what the letter would say, but at the very first, I guess it's a fair point. Let's find out what it would cost to investigate that and go from there. There's been no indication that I'm aware of, certainly nothing's come to council that they have any interest in this whatsoever, but let's go from there.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I'm really glad this has come up at this point. We did have Georgian Bluffs to one of our, we reciprocated their invitation, and they were at a meeting. That was brought up at that meeting. It went right around the room, and I've had verbally 3 or 4 of the councillors in Georgian Bluffs say to me, please bring it up again. So I really do think this is not dead in the water at all, and I'd like it to go forward, like you. And I thought I really give you credit for bringing it forward, Councillor Dare.
Any further discussion? Councillor Dare.
Since if this passes, the report will come to the new council. It'll be new council here. It'll be new council in Georgian Bluffs. And I think that we shouldn't say, well, 4 years ago we weren't able to move forward. I hope that we get that the new council of Owen Sound gets a different reception from the new council in Georgian Bluffs.
If it would be helpful for council, what I'd like to ask the consultant is what would be the cost of doing a report that considers a little broader range of things? So one is to get the routes out there.
Mm-hmm.
The second is regarding the comprehensive cost for both options, specialized transit. The third is on hours of operation. And we've been around this. If we're going to take them out there with the intent of allowing people who are going to a movie to go out there, we have to get them back. And then the other one would be for them to advise on what the implications might be for funding for both the City of Owen Sound and Georgian Bluffs, what the options would be. So for gas tax options, et cetera. So that's what I would be asking them, give me a proposal on what that review would cost.
Councillor Dare.
And that was all in my motion. Just on the hours of operation, obviously the new council will have to decide that, but as we heard earlier, to come from the west side to the Bay Shore is $15, and to go back is $15. At least if the buses got you to the movie, you would only need to bring a taxi back. You wouldn't have to take a taxi there and back. But again, that's for the next council to decide.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do know the amount to extend hours of service for our transit. That was in the last report.
That's right.
Not specifically to Sunset Strip, and it was tens of thousands of dollars. So that would be the first point. The second one is, again, I'm not opposed to this. No one thinks it's presumptuous of us to ask a consultant whether Georgian Bluffs can spend their tax money on it when they've never asked us to do that. It just seems rather odd. Are they doing studies asking what money we can, anyway, I think I've made my point. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not opposed to the motion. I think it's always good to investigate. it would be nice if there was some, after 4 years, if there was some discussion from their side that they want us to investigate it. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, and I'm certainly not opposed to the motion. You know, I can't help thinking about, you know, that movie, If You Build It, They Will Come. And I think about that, and I think about our post office in Canada, who is losing money. And what do they do because they're losing money? Do they enhance their service? No, they don't enhance their service. They cut their service. They cut, and they make it more difficult for people to deal with them. Whereas in the States, their post office was losing money, and what did? They increased their service. They increased their hours of service, they increased their product, and they did all kinds of things. And now they're back in the black, and they're making money. And I still believe when you provide service, and you provide good service, people will use the service. And so to me, this is all part and parcel of providing a good service. And there definitely are a lot of people that go out to the show, and lots of times I do occasionally myself, I do drive, but there's lots of times there's young people that are, and I mean young people, that are out there at 10 and 11 o'clock at night just hanging around because they're waiting for a ride home. And so, you know, if we did provide the service, I think it would be a service well provided, and I think it would be well used. So I'm very supportive of it, very concerned about where we're going to get the money, and very concerned about butting into our neighbor's business without their permission. However, let's go ahead and see what we can come up with and go from there. Let's just do it.
Okay, we're still, okay, yeah, Councillor Lemon.
Well, I can remember when we did have transit service to Georgian Bluffs, and I remember specifically $1.44 days at the old Woco, and you couldn't get on the bus. You couldn't even stand on the bus. It was packed. There are things in Georgian Bluffs that aren't in Owen Sound. There are things in Owen Sound that aren't in Georgian Bluffs. But I think it's time we got away from the old mindset of Fortress Owen Sound and started looking at bridges. And this is a very good way to start a bridge. We've got to start cooperating as municipalities, and we've got to start looking ahead instead of saying, well, they didn't ask us. No, but if we have some good information, I'm sure they'd like to receive it. And I disagree very strongly that there's been no interest when we had I was going to say all candidates, but I guess it was all candidates, but from Georgian Bluffs and Owen Sound, we had that meeting some time ago that Councillor Chamberlain brought forward that we should have. I certainly heard around the table a great deal of interest in transit. That was expressed, and it was certainly expressed after the meeting in conversation with some of the councillors. I think we've got to start working ahead, and this may be a first step, and I do not think Georgian Bluffs is going to be offended by this. We're simply looking to serve our citizens, and some of our people in Owen Sound work on the Sunset Strip, and now have to take a taxi to get to work if they don't have a car. So it would ease employment as well, and that should be considered, because I do know a lot of the people who work out there actually live in Owen Sound. They don't live in Georgian Bluffs. So we'd be benefiting workers in Owen Sound. So let's look at the big picture and forget that there's a moat around Owen Sound, and what goes on in our neighbors doesn't affect us, because it does.
Councillor Body and then Councillor Adair. I think we've just about beaten this one up to death.
I was just going to say I agree with Councillor Lemon quite a bit. If we're going to look at this, I hope we'd look comprehensively at providing bus service to all the residents up Brook that want to come in and shop in our downtown, and we'd do it two ways. We'd be bringing their residents in to do shopping in Owen Sound, so it's really comprehensive, and it works well for all of us.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. To wrap it up, as the mover of the motion, just to be clear, the impetus to take the bus out to the Galaxy Cinema didn't come from Georgia Bluffs, it came from our riders. And so I think there is some, I don't want to say obligation, but I think it's our riders on our bus that want to go out there. So I think we should at least investigate whether that A, is possible within the system that we have, and then B, what the response to Georgia Bluffs is. So there's sort of a two-part to this, but it has been our riders, when we asked them, where do you want to go? They identified all kinds of locations, and they identified one location just outside of Owen Sound, almost to a person, that they wanted to go there. So I think we've been edging around this for months. We need to do something.
Okay. To the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Council might be interested in attending the next meeting of Grey County Council, where the regional transportation strategy will be tabled, and that's a particular interest to me as a Grey County representative and the vice chair of the county's Transportation Advisory Committee in terms of regional transportation. So having all of these students that are living in Owen Sound that are from elsewhere, I can tell you that it's a challenge for a community our size to have a really robust public transit system. So the county took this on to look at a more regional approach, tying all these little systems together that often have very few riders on the buses to make a more robust system with a one-call portal. So that is the first Tuesday in October at 10 in the morning. Councillor Chamberlain, you had a couple of items of other business.
Thank you very much. I had the privilege of being a guest at the Chinese community had a welcome networking reception. It was held at Yummy Yummies, and it was yummy yummy. We had it was very interesting to me because the purpose of their get-togethers within their own community is to try to promote their Chinese culture. And last New Year's, they went together with the library and Grey Roots and Tom Thompson, and they put together a festival for their New Year's celebration, and they're going to do that again this year. But that day, I learned there's 60 to 70 people living in Owen Sound that are their heritage is from China. Mostly they come from Hong Kong and from Vietnam. And most of them can speak some English, but they also communicated that day a lot in Cantonese and Mandarin. So it was very neat. And of course, people maybe know that Yummy Yummies was the Ritz Cafe, a Ritz restaurant. It is the oldest Chinese restaurant in Owen Sound, and it started in the 1800s, and it's been a Chinese restaurant that whole time. So it was very interesting to have that. And I'd just like to congratulate that group for, they do the work with the welcoming communities as well, and with our sister, and it was a very nice day. And you weren't there that day, but you were well missed, well missed. The other thing was this weekend I had the opportunity to do a little tour for the local Bruce Trail Club was hosting the Bruce Trail Conservancy 50th anniversary, their AGM, and it was in Owen Sound. It started on the Friday evening at the Tom Thompson with their reception, and all day Saturday at the Legion, and again on the Sunday morning. But they mostly did excursions out. It was a rainy weekend, but these guys are really good hikers. But I had the group that was doing what they call the Owen Sound Downtown Tour. It was very fascinating for me because when we started out from the Legion on foot, and I took them through the new family health team area so that we could get to the walkway in the harbor. I took a whole hour to get to the bridge. They stopped at every one of our interpretive signs. There was much discussion. There was much discussion in front of the Marine Rail Museum. We weren't going in there. So the only thing that I wanted to bring up was that some of our interpretive signs are pretty hard to read with, I guess it's acid rain, and we've already talked about that. We'll get those fixed up. But they loved those interpretive signs, and I didn't know to the degree that I would be commenting on the harbor, and thank goodness they were there, because I learned a lot myself. The last one was just another little thing about the salmon tour that's happening. The salmon are jumping already today, and there was good footage on our tourism site with the fish jumping at the mill dam. But there's a great collaboration happening with the city and with the Sydenham Sportsman Club and with the Grey Sauble Conservation Foundation. And this year, there's going to be, and this is what we saw at the economic development, but there's going to be tours down to the spawning channels that are below Ingalls Falls, but they're going to be guided tours. So the members of the foundation will be volunteering, taking the groups of people from the conservation area, their pavilion, down to the water, and then they will meet up with the Sydenham sportsmen people who will tell them a lot of what they're seeing and what's going on. So that's an interpretation of, so that's an add-on to our tour, and it's going to be, it started this year, but it has great potential for being a very good festival going forward. There is a lot of interest in our fish in our river this fall, as there was last too. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Purdon.
Yes, at our last council meeting, I spoke about the Sisters in Spirit, just a reminder to the public and to council as well of this event coming up on October 4th. All across Canada, there will be events to remember missing and murdered Aboriginal women on October the 4th. And we will be meeting here at the foot of City Hall in the plaza with a speaker and followed up by a march over to the Métis Centre, which is in the lower part of the United Way building, for a reception. So I'd invite all of council and staff and the students here as well. It's a very, very important topic in our country, missing and murdered Aboriginal women, and a very important thing to be drawing attention to and taking action on. October the 4th.
Thank you. Do you have a time?
It starts at 1 o'clock at the city.
So October the 4th, 1 p.m. at steps of City Hall. Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Purdon and other members of council who covered a number of mayoral duties over the weekend in terms of bringing greetings at different functions. I believe there was a half a dozen different ones to be at, all within 24 hours. So I thank you for that. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to bring the public's attention. There has been a fair bit of comment over council's motion about the art gallery, and I just want to mention to the public that the motion was that we did at the last council meeting, that council approves in principle having the Tom Thompson Art Gallery move out of out of being a division of the City of Owen Sound, and there is a public meeting being held on Thursday, October the 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Bayshore Community Center, where everyone can come out and speak their mind or say what they want to say. And so I'm asking people, please do that. Make sure you get all the information, and then there'll be no more questions about what's going on. You'll be able to go and find out the answers. That's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
It is best to be informed. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. That's a nice segue, the informed part. A question for the city clerk. The new sign bylaw, and particularly pertaining to election signage, how was the new sign bylaw impacted on that, or what was the old sign bylaw in relation to election signing? What's the new sign bylaw?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. The sign bylaw that existed before the current sign bylaw indicated that signs could go up for municipal election anytime within 1 month of the municipal election. That was changed in the current bylaw to be 30 days, so that you didn't interpret a month as 28 days, 30 days, or 31 days. There was a number of days put to it. But that was the only change, other than there is now an exemption for signs by Greenwood Cemetery.
So specifically to the time, it went from 1 month to 30 days.
Yep, that's correct.
And that 1 month provision, do you have any idea how long that's been was in place for?
The sign bylaw that we repealed with the current bylaws began in 1986.
Since 86. Okay, thank you.
Good question. Councillor Lemon.
Yes, Your Worship. When the council raised the sign bylaw, that begs the question. I noticed some signs for a candidate in Owen Sound out in Georgian Bluffs. Do we have any, I guess we don't have any jurisdiction, so
No, but that's a very good marketing point.
I find that interesting.
And good for
Hopefully-
him.
Hopefully, the candidate knows the metes and bounds of the city of
I'm
Owen
sure
Sound.
I'm sure he knows what he's doing.
I didn't say it was a he. You're assuming.
Maybe there's other signs.
Yeah, well, maybe there, I don't know, but
Will be tomorrow.
yeah,
I
there
think
may
there
be
could be a few.
a whole
That's
bunch.
right.
That may become a new growth industry on the Sunset Strip. But anyway, just a comment about that. I was a little concerned that it's the first time I've ever seen signs for Owen Sound in another municipality. I guess we're using that broad interpretation of community. But anyway, the question I had pertained to the Black Clawson Kennedy site. And one of the concerns I have is the way the fencing's been done. In the wintertime, when the sidewalk plows go down, and this is no reflection on the guys who operate the sidewalk plows, they do a wonderful job. But when that snow is flying off the blade, it has velocity. And I'm very concerned that some of the fencing that they put up does not have a bottom brace. It has a top brace, but it doesn't have a bottom brace. And the snow, when it hits there, is going to be hitting at the bottom, and it's going to create pressure on the fencing because it's going to be in clumps and there will be some ice.
Councillor Lemon, I can honestly say that as the snow flies, if it ruins the fence, something else is going to fly and the fence will be fixed.
Middle of winter, have fun.
Councillor McManaman.
Sorry, Your Worship, I did have two items and I forgot the second one. So
Okay.
is that all right? I just wondered about an update from probably Mr. Becking on, or from city staff on the Building Canada Fund application. We had that meeting 2 weeks ago. Just
I
wondered if
was
there's an
going
update.
to
Oh,
Ms. Corsi for that, so
Great.
let's, between the two of us, we remembered. Thank you.
So I'm
Ms.
going
Corsi.
to ask the two staff members
Sure.
who put the two applications in to comment on those. So perhaps we could start with our Director of Operations.
Through you, Your Worship, the application went in on the Wednesday before the Friday deadline for the digester for the wastewater treatment plant. Total application was $2.2 million, 90% of which is just under the 90% funding level. At this point, we've assured the government, and I can assure council, that we're in a construction-ready mode. As soon as we have the funds, we're ready to hit the ground running. So,
It worked out well.
yes, very much so.
And another item that worked out very well, Director of Community Services.
So council will recall that you had identified two projects, the digester as well as a partnership with Georgian College. And if the partnership with Georgian around the SCF fund wasn't required, that your second project would be the Downtown River Precinct project, the phase 1 of that. Through a lot of efforts from the Director of Finance, the Manager of Economic Development, the county's Director of Finance, it was finally determined, working with the government, that in fact Georgian College was an eligible applicant on their own and didn't need to partner with the city. That created an opportunity to submit the Downtown River Precinct Phase 1 as our application or expression of interest for the SCF application. So the application was submitted. It includes not only the riverscape and streetscape improvements along First Avenue East, but as identified in our asset management plan, the 1885 water main that's overdue for replacement, stormwater management, quality enhancements, as well as road and curb replacement along that was submitted for that application. The total application was 1.5 million, with the city share being 530,000 in round numbers.
Councillor Lemon.
Did Georgian College, were they able to submit the application in
Yes.
time for that?
Yes,
And so they have submitted.
yes.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Purdon.
I'd really like to commend staff for all the work in getting these applications together, being very fleet of foot and fast with the funding pencils. It's really great, and if we can get both of these projects moving along, it's going to be terrific for the city.
I will echo that. Thank you very much to staff for working so quickly on that. It was a good news email that happened, so thank you so much. We have Mr. Becking, just a brief overview of how our water and wastewater plants held up over the second in our 100-year storm event in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you, Your Worship. From basically Saturday through to Sunday afternoon, the area got hit with about another 90 millimeters of rain. To put that into context, that's just shy of 4 inches. As far as the water treatment system is concerned, the plant came through fine. One challenge that we didn't have to face this time around was, of course, the loss of power and the challenges that posed. The distribution system likewise was fine. The wastewater treatment plant, again, managed to survive the storm reasonably well. We had a few, let's just say, very large mud puddles out in there because of the current construction, which will cause the contractor a little bit of heartburn, but he'll get around it. With respect to the collection system, there was bypassing on the west side. At this point, we don't know how much and in which locations. Staff were going to look at the sensors late this afternoon, and I just haven't had the feedback from them. In terms of surface drainage, there was localized flooding in a number of areas across the city. We're going to be using the GIS system to compare the complaints that we received from the September 5th storm, compare those to the complaints that we received from Sunday, with a view to, first of all, finding out similarities and differences. That may give us some clues as to why these localized flooding instances are occurring. I have to say that I have spoken to a number of residents and businesses over the course of the last 24 hours. Frankly, there are some areas of flooding that just don't make sense. And so we need to get to the bottom of it. We have authorized some video inspection of a number of pipes and services to see if we can understand what's going on. That will happen over the course of the next week or two, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it.
Thank you very much for that update, and I think a lot of us are mopping up a wee bit in our own homes. Councillor Lemon.
When are we expecting the next 100-year storm?
Let's just say that I've removed that phrase from my vocabulary because the concept was developed by a statistician, and my daughter used to call it sadistics. So in any event, I hope it's not anytime soon, but then again, somebody talked about turning it into white stuff and the challenges that may pose.
We have to always remember that weather is a federal matter, and so if we want to discuss it at all, we really need to talk to the federal government on
Well,
this.
we should bring Larry in to tell him we've had enough 100-year storms.
There we go. Thank you for that. Were there any other members of council with items of other business that they wanted to bring forward at this time? Councillor Chamberlain.
I guess I should just say that the dates, that those guided tours is the first weekend of October and the second weekend of October, even on Thanksgiving Day. It's only on the Saturday, Sunday of each of those weekends. The salmon tours, that's what I'm talking about. Remember I mentioned it and then I didn't say the dates. That's all. Thank you.
And to the Georgian College students, there will be a test on this in a week. No, I'm kidding. We do have one item of other business, was on our desks this evening, and that is Operations Advisory Committee minutes. And within that is a lease for a new restaurant opening at the Owen Sound Billy Bishop Museum. Councillor? Or Airport. Owen Sound Billy Bishop Airport. That's important.
That would have been a great surprise. I would move, Your Worship, the approval of the minutes, including the Tilly's Restaurant at the Owen Sound Billy Bishop Airport. So people don't go to the Billy Bishop house thinking that's where the new restaurant is.
Would create an interesting, yes. Councillor Body.
Just a question for staff. Do we still need the approval of Niagara Escarpment Commission before we can do this? Is this conditional on that?
If I could, yes. We do have the application in. We are expecting a response fairly quickly on that.
My other question was, one part of the report talked about removing carpet from the entire cafe area, and the business requirements submitted by Mr. Tilson, I think, referred to, I can't find it, removing carpet just from the food preparation area, the way I understood it. Do we know which?
I believe it's only in the food preparation area, but I would have to confirm that.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Motion that the committee rise, please. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Adair. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We're now in formal session. Ask for a resolution adopting proceedings in committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Body, that the action taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Notices of motion, new business by resolution. Bylaws, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Body, that bylaw numbers 2014-144, 2014-160 through 2014-167 be passed and enacted.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried, and we are now adjourned. Have a good evening.